we can cut some metal, or I hope. I've been waiting a minute for this. This panel is going to come out first. I'm going to go through right now and mark all of the spot welds on it. I've got a replacement panel that will go in. It should help me find the spot welds. Wherever there's a hole, I'll mark it, I'll come back, drill it, and get the new panel in here first. The replacement panel, bring the camera with me. The replacement panel that I've got is from eBay. And I don't know why, but it came with this goo all over. It looks like someone's put some sort of tape on it. So it'll probably get a little bit of heat and some goo gone to get that off. Inside of it looks nice. You can see in the background I've got another project I'm working on for the lathe. To drill the spot welds, I've got a spot weld cutter here. This is gonna basically find the points where it's welded, cut around it, and then it should lift the panel out, and I've got a drill bit to follow up with it as if I need to. So what I'm doing right here is I'm just marking all of the spots. I've gone through, and anywhere it looks like it's depressed, you can't really see it in the video, but it looks like it's kind of sunken in, I've marked it, and that's just so it's easier to find where these spots are going to be that I'm going to drill. Drilling it, I'm just moving along my marks here. Time-lapse speeds it up a little bit. It's not real exciting, but you drill one, and then you put a little pressure on it, drill it, put a little pressure on it, and it shows if I have it free or not, and I'm just working my way around like that. Now doing this, every once in a while I miss, so when that happens I just buzz it with a cutoff wheel. And if you look here, I got a little carried away with the chisel and I drove it in too far and lost it. I had to find a tool to drive it back out. And if you haven't figured it out by now, I'm by no means an expert at any of this. I'm just kind of figuring it out as I go, like most things. But the center punch helped a ton. I should have used this from the beginning. It's no different than drilling a hole. If you give it something to sit in, it lets that pin in the center of the spot cutter hold its position rather than dancing around the panel. I believe I zoomed in at some point. You'll see a couple of these early on. That bit was getting pretty wild. It danced around and scuffed up the panel. At the end of the day, it doesn't matter. It's getting thrown away anyways. It's going to get replaced with that new panel. Well, I've got all of the spot welds drilled out, I believe. You can see I've jumped around a little bit with this new bit I got. It's a cheap Amazon bit, and even with the center punch, every once in a while if it catches an edge, it jumps and dances, but overall it did really good. I think I can get this panel out now with a little massaging, and see if I can find any more points. If I put pressure on it with a pry bar and pull, you'll actually see the divot where there's still spot welds, and if there's any remainers, I'll hit them, but with a little bit of hammer therapy, I think we're there. I think this thing's coming out. Success! I got it out of there. There's a little bit of cleanup to do yet. I'm gonna have to grind all these spots where the spot welds are left. I thought this was pretty rust free, but I guess anytime you have stacked layered metal, it's always gonna find its way in between. It's not terrible, it's mostly surface rust. The next step will be grinding that clean, and then I've got a rust converter I'm still gonna put on it just to be safe and make sure none of it pops its way through. We look back over here at the panel that's now out. The new one certainly looks better, even with all the tape and gunk on it. It'd be nice to have these mounting holes again to put the hood hinge on. And the panel itself, this one was just chewed all the way around, where this new one is just a much better piece. Well, watching that last video clip, I realized why this is all taped up. This must have been a return that somebody sold again. I don't know how I missed this the first time, but look at the top of this thing. It is chewed up. So I've got an option. I can send it back and wait a long time for the replacement to come in, which I might do. Or I could just work and straighten this panel out and repair this. It shouldn't be terrible. That top seam there will get dialed over anyways. This portion is more important to me. And overall, the rest of the panel looks pretty all right. But it's disheartening when you buy something brand new and you get that. This won't be a deal breaker for me. I guess I could use a body hammer, but this part is going to be covered up by the fender. I've got a nice straight edge here where I can kind of work it over. Much better. Looks like a panel again. I don't know if we can see this in the camera. Let me get oriented here. But we're back on a hard edge again. Maybe not completely perfect, but pretty darn close. And again, this is all going to be covered up with a fender, so back on the grid. Now I'm going to work through and grind each one of these spot welds and kind of clean up some of the rust here. What I'm using is a Milwaukee Fuel M12 grinder. This thing's not as powerful or not as much torque as a pneumatic, but the trade-off is there's no cord to get in the way, so you can angle this wherever you want. And you've probably noticed I've covered up the windshield because now that we're throwing sparks, I don't want to take any chances of damaging that windshield. But I'm going to get to it and you can jump back into the time lapse. All right, I've got my panel set up inside the car, and I used a pin here to align the holes at the shock tower. The trouble is, this doesn't fit very well at all, and I think this is a common problem with these aftermarkets. You can see I've got a huge gap on the back here where that spot weld's supposed to attach. I could draw this in here, but that's too far. And on the top, it's really bad. You can see daylight through the thing. I'll bring it back around and get a better look at from this angle. So I have to make a decision. I can either mount it there and then fill this big gap right there with sealant or caulk, which I don't feel great about because I'm not gonna be able to spot weld it, or I can trim up this panel and bring it back to where it meets the firewall. If I do that though, my holes are gonna be a little off, which I can correct. And it's going to move the location of my bolts here for the inner fender for the hinge. I don't know which way is right. I don't have any reference points because the other one was so damaged. I don't know if it needs to be tight against the firewall or lined up with these holes, but I'm going to roll the dice, put it tight against the firewall with a little massage, and then hopefully I'll have enough play in the hinge that if I am off a little on my locators, that you won't even notice it. I'll just move the hood on the hinge a little bit. Getting a little squirrely there. So as I work this in, you can see where I've got gaps still here and here real bad, but I'm hitting tight in a couple of spots. So what I'm gonna do, I can do this one-handed here, is find the locations where I'm touching and make a mark. And it's again down here. I can see on the inside, I've got a tight spot right here. And I'll massage those spots. I'll have to cut them a little bit and relieve the seam so I can push this back. And again, here's my holes. I'm gonna be a little off on the holes, but I can correct that with the cover plate. So this part's a little sped up just to stop it from being so boring. But what I've done here is I grabbed this little M12 bandsaw. It worked out perfect. Rather than using a cutoff wheel to cut this and having a big gap, I opted for the bandsaw. It's a small little kerf. It cuts right there at the bend, and I can choose how much material that I want to remove. There's a million different ways you can cut this, but at the end of the day, all I'm trying to do here is remove some material to bring that fold in a little tighter, and that'll give us the clearance we need for those other spots. I'm going to sound like one of the Milwaukee reps here, but that little tool is pretty handy. I use it all the time when I'm trying to cut bar stock, or if I get a piece of tubing, like a 1-inch tubing that's 20 feet long on the rack, rather than having to drop it down and carry it into the other room where my other bandsaw is, I usually just lop off pieces with this bandsaw, and it works out pretty well. If you don't have one, I would take a look at them. They're not very expensive. Well, I bring the camera in right here, and that's it. Just a little gap, just enough to make some room there so we can get this panel in. Now, I had so much success with this big hammer last time, I still opted for it. I didn't go in and get the body hammer. We're this far into it. I just went ahead and stayed with the ball peen, and for something like this, it's not like it's real critical, and no one's ever going to see this either. It's all tucked away and spot welded and up under the firewall. But I had pretty good control with this, so I tapped it in and corrected the gaps so that it was ready for weld. So what I've done is I've taken out some material and then closed the gap here near my crude marks to show where it was hitting. And I did the same here. I just kind of repositioned this down, and I can fix the angle on it on the bottom once I rotate it up. But once I know this will clear, I'll just keep working it out. I'll keep taking material out and bringing it in, and then once I've got it where I want it and it fits, we'll weld it up, I'll grind it, and then recoat it and paint it, and it'll look nice and clean. Well, the test fit went good, so it's time to go ahead and fill these with weld, and you can see that the material I took out has now closed the gap. I took the grinder to it just to remove some of the paint, and I'll TIG weld it. That way I can put my reliefs for the spot welds and get this new panel in. An awful lot of work for something that no one will ever see, but at least I'll know it's right. Alright, so the panel's fit and it's ready to go. The next step is making reliefs for the spot welds. And there's a couple different techniques for this. Some people drill them. I've got a tool that's pneumatic that I've had good luck with. So I try to space them out evenly if I can. I've got a marker here. Fortunately, my table has marks on it, so I can kind of lay it out that way to make sure everything is uniform and even. But on the inside contact points, I've made little cheats. The way this tool works, and hopefully the camera picks it up, it's got a little punch on it. So I find my location of where I need my hole, pull it, release, and it makes a fine little hole just like that. Now I'm gonna do that a number of times until I've got enough of them on this panel that I can weld it secure and install it. Okay, so one last test before I mount this thing. You can see I put a little bit of primer on any of the bare metal that I can weld through. And what I've done is I've lined a straight edge up on the center of the hole for each of the top mounting point for the hinge. And I've set my valence where the old holes were where it was mounted. And I'm just drawing a measurement just to make sure that I'm somewhat closer within spec. And I'm right at, as I hold this here, 9 7/8. And I'm just going to double check it to this side here. So again, pickup point on the end, 9 7/8. I feel really good about that. I'll clamp this down and I'll go ahead and weld it in. This is the final product. All I've got left is to grind down these tacks. But as you can see, all the way around, it's nice and snug. It brought up the firewall real tight. I think I've got maybe a 1/16 to an 1/8 at the top, snug in spots, and the biggest gap I've got down there is about 3/16. But the very bottom's nice and snug, and I can fill that with some seam sealer. With this panel having some ill fitment, I may have to adjust this a little bit. The fender will cover this whole inside, but I hate how much of an overhang there is on this new panel. I guess it'll give more support on the outside there, and then you can see on the inside my tacks from the inside and the fit as well. A much snugger fit. I'll have to adjust these holes a bit, but on the next video these are getting cut out anyways, so at least I had that for stability and support while I put it in, but all of this is going to get cut out on this next video. Hope you enjoyed it.